Hi everyone and welcome. I'm feeling a bit blue now in the start of the year, so I wanted to do a fun blue eyeshadow look. I start with a red lip liner, winging out that eyeliner. Domenika. I'm starting with a bit of eyeshadow primer. I'm using Smashbox Photo Finish 24-hour shadow primer. Applying it with my fingertips. Then I go on to the brows, which are the pillars of the face. And I'm using the brow powder from the Beauty Express for Brows and Eyes by Anastasia Beverly Hills. This brow powder can also be bought individually. I like to brush up my brows before I go in with the powder. Using light hair-like strokes. And I'm using the color Blond. And today I'm thinking about doing a graphic eye. This is going to be a graphic eye look. And I'm using the Norvina palette. And I'm starting with the base color. This is going to be a modern take on a 80s blue eyeshadow. And for this step you can use any matte color that you like to use as a base, or perhaps a paint pot or a concealer. And this will brighten and prime just to get an even color down before you apply other shades. And I'm putting this all over the eyes up to the brow. Creating an even canvas. Then I go into the grayish brown volatile shade with a pencil brush. And I'm using it to map out my shape. And I'm following my crease and creating kind of a floating wing, winging it out at the outer corner. Now I'm going into the blender brush to blend. And I try not to overblend because I want a graphic look. I don't want it to be too soft, but not too harsh either. And I'm trying not to overblend because I want this to be a graphic look. Just this floating wing look is quite cool in its of itself. You don't have to add any more color really, but I want to experiment a bit more with color and taking the look to another level. And it can be a good idea to look straight into the mirror to make sure the wing part is even on both eyes. Then I'm going underneath the eye with the same color. And blending it with the larger, fluffier brush. Then I go into a flat concealer brush. This one is by Bobbi Brown. And I'm going into the pale blue lilac color called Soul. This is a very beautiful color. It's my favorite color from the palette. And I'm going in thin layers and tapping the brush to avoid fallout. And I'm applying it all over my lid up to where my shape is created. Kind of blending it into the Volatile shade. It's kind of a blue, purpley, pale color. Really unique. And I'm using the other side of the brush that has no product on to blend everything. Then I go back in and make sure that the color is even, that there's no patches. Then I go back in and blend everything. And I go back into Volatile and intensify that. Because I still want the depth of the Volatile, although I'm using mostly the Soul all over. Then I intensify the blue a bit more. Then I use my color switch to get the pigment off of the brush. And going back into the base color, using it as a brow highlight, but also to blend everything. Make sure that even though it's a graphic eye, it's still soft. Then I'll go back into the blue Soul color and intensifying it a bit more. I always think it's better to go in layers when doing eyeshadow and makeup in general. and kind of building it up. And taking the same soul color with my pencil brush and go underneath the eye. This color is just such a happy color, in my opinion, although people kind of associate blue with a more kind of sad color. But I like to wear blue whenever I'm feeling blue to make me feel a bit better, if that makes sense. Then I'm just blending a bit more, going back and forth, intensifying the color and blending it out. I always curl my lashes before mascara, and I like to take the eyelash curler right into my roots, kind of clamp and hold a bit. But I also like to kind of push it a bit back to get the maximum curl and lift. For mascara, I'm using the Monsieur Big by Lancôme, wiggling it into my roots and brushing it up and out. And I'm applying a bit more on the outside corner to emphasize that wing shape. You can also use a bit of individual lashes at the outside corner to emphasize the shape. I wouldn't use a full strip of lashes with this look because I would think it will take a bit away from the blue eyeshadow. And I'm using the waterproof because my eyes are quite runny nowadays. And I'm applying a bit underneath. And I go over and make sure there's no fallout and blend everything. To hydrate my lips, I'm applying the Dior Addict Lip Glow in pink. This is a perfect subtle pink color for Zoom meetings. To prime the base, I'm using the Charlotte Tilbury Wonder Glow. I want a light base to keep this look fresh and modern, because a blue eye and a pink lip can become a bit too much 80s, and a natural looking skin is going to make it look modern. And 80s is a bit on trend now. But a very heavy look to the skin can become quite dated, in my opinion. I'm using the Dream Cushion by Dior. And especially with a blue eye that can emphasize darkness on the face, this cushion will help counteract that because it's so illuminating. And it has a lot of SPF in it also, which is why I like to use it in the summer to touch up my SPF throughout the day. And I'm using the color 000, which is meant to be colorless, but it has a slight tint. And this has barely any coverage in it. Then I go into the concealer. I'm using Magic Away by Tilbury. And I think it's important to use a bit of concealer with a blue eye because it emphasizes the dark circles underneath the eyes. And I'm applying it mostly into the inner corner right underneath my eyes. You can also apply it on the outside corner if you want to kind of shape the shadow a bit with it. I tend to apply it mostly on the inner corner and right underneath because that's where I'm dark and that's where most people are dark. And I'm also applying a bit around the nostrils and lips. And I like to warm up my fingers before I blend it out. That kind of makes it melt more into the skin, the body warmth. And I like to blend with my ring finger because that's the weakest finger, especially around the eyes, because I don't want to have too much pressure underneath the eyes because the skin is very thin there and you can easily create wrinkles. For blush, I'm using the Glowgasm in Peachgasm by Tilbury. And this will also make the look more modern because it has a lovely glowing texture. And this I'm applying to the cheeks and also onto my nose. It's kind of a blush highlighter hybrid. And again, I like to warm up my fingers before I blend. And I love to blend cream or liquid blush with my fingers. To powder, I'm using the Dior Nude Air Loose Powder. And I make sure to pat out that concealer before I set it with the powder to make sure I don't set any creases. And I'm applying the powder with a powder puff and pressing it into the skin. Then I take my powder and sculpt brush to make sure there's no residue of powder on my skin and blending everything in. This is such a good brush for all over. To contour, I'm using the Filmstar Bronze and Glow by Tilbury, using only the darkest shade today and going underneath my cheekbones. A bit underneath the jaw also. And it can be a good idea to take out your big earrings when you're going underneath the jaw. And I love to contour for Zoom meetings. And to contour the chin and underneath the jaw can be a good idea for Zoom meetings because you don't want to have too much of a double chin to give my face a bit more definition. And then I'm using the color switch with the blender brush that I used on the eyes. I'm using the same sculpt shade. And I'm going down the sides of the nose in a U-turn underneath the tip. and up into my brows. I don't want my nose to look too contoured. I want it to look kind of natural. Then I go back into the powder and sculpt brush and make sure everything is blended on the nose. Make sure there's no harsh lines. To give this look a bit more of a celestial feel, I'm going into the Glow Kit by Anastasia in Sugar. Using the Starburst and the Masmellow shade. Starting with a pink Starburst all over my entire cheek. And adding the more Marshmallow Champagne shade on top, higher up on the cheeks. And then I mix those two shades and go down my nose and onto the top lip. And then I take my pinky finger and mix those two shades again and apply it into my inner corner. This really brightens up the eyes. And then I'm putting back my earrings, which I made myself. They are meant to represent kind of a fantasy fruit. They are great fun. And those are kind of my favorite fun earrings. And you can leave the look here, or I'm going to add a bit more pink. So I'm going into the Gloss Embrace by Lisa Eldridge in the color Beauty. Because I want to have a bit more pigment on my lips, but it's also very beautiful just with the Lip Glow by Dior. And I think pink and blue, or should I say lilac, go so well together. So there you have it, a mood boosting look for when you're feeling blue. I started with a red lip liner, winging out that eyeliner. Stay safe, and as we say in Norway, ha det bra.